We're just a few days away from the fifth and final season of You, so this is everything you want to remember before watching. We're mainly going to cover season 4, but there are definitely pieces from the earlier seasons that you're going to want to remember, especially season 1, since Joe is returning to New York City. So season 4 picks up with Joe having faked his death, since remember at the end of season 3, he killed Love, the house burned down, he gave up Henry, everything, and now he has fled California and moved to London, where he became a professor at a university under the name Jonathan Moore. Now, initially, Joe went to Europe because he was looking for Marianne, who was his season 3 obsession, and he did find her in Paris with her daughter, but when he realized how afraid she was of him, he decided to reinvent himself to prove that he wasn't this monster that she thought he was. Back in London, Joe started spending all of his time with these rich socialites, including Kate, who would eventually become his season 4 obsession / girlfriend. Slowly but surely, a lot of these socialites started to be killed, and the media dubbed it the Eat the Rich Killer, thinking that there was some kind of moral doing behind this. By the end of part 1, we learned that the Eat the Rich Killer was Reese, who was one of the socialite crew members who was running for mayor, and Joe finds out about this and wants to expose him to clear his own name. So in part 2, Joe confronts Reese, but Reese has the upper hand because he says that he has kidnapped Marianne and tells Joe that the only way to get her back is to kill Kate's father, who was a corrupt businessman. Joe tries to kill Kate's father, but he ends up blackmailing Joe instead and saying that he knows Joe's true identity and he has to kill Reese instead. So Joe goes back to Reese to kill him, but when he does, Reese doesn't recognize him, says he never met him, and that angers Joe, so he kills Reese. But he still sees Reese in this imaginary form, and he realizes the big twist was that the Reese he was talking to the whole season was just a figment of his imagination, and Joe was actually the Eat the Rich Killer. So while this was all going on, one of Joe's students, Nadia, was getting suspicious of Joe, so she broke into his apartment and found clues that led her to find Marianne, who was actually being held captive by Joe in one of his infamous glass boxes. So in a flashback episode, we learned that when Joe found Marianne in Paris, he actually didn't leave her alone. He drugged her and kidnapped her and was holding her hostage. And at this same time is when he started to have this obsession with the real Reese in his redemption story and confirming that he never actually knew the real Reese. At one point, Marianne did try to escape. Her and Joe had a physical struggle, and when Joe realized all the pain that he had caused the woman he supposedly loved, he slammed his head into the glass. And that signaled the moment that the darkest parts of Joe turned into this imaginary form of Reese. So you had the true Joe, that was the identity he wished he had, like moral compass, doing good, and then all of the dark parts of him as the killer in Reese's form. So now back in present day, Joe has acknowledged that he hallucinated Reese and that he was really the killer, and he goes to see Marianne, who he was holding captive. So remember, Nadia had found Marianne, and the two of them devised a plan for her to escape, which included Nadia giving Marianne drugs to fake her death. So when Joe came down to the box, he saw Marianne completely overdose and just assumed she was dead. And he then took her to a park bench and left her there. And Nadia found her and revived her, and Marianne was able to go free back to Paris and be with her daughter. Now, Joe really believed that Marianne was dead and he was responsible for it, so he goes to kill Kate's father, who was that corrupt businessman who did some shady business that led to kids getting cancer, and hated how he had manipulated Kate's life and influenced it. So Joe killed him, and then he decided he wanted to kill himself, so he jumped off a bridge. Joe ends up surviving the fall and wakes up in the hospital with Kate by his side. She tells him that her father left her everything, and it kind of implies that she knows that Joe is responsible for Reese's death, but still accepts him, so Joe kind of confesses his true identity, and they stay together. Back to Nadia, remember, she knows everything about Joe and how he's the real killer, so she goes to his apartment to get evidence that connects him to Reese's murder, but Joe finds her and then pins everything on her instead, and she goes to prison and never speaks to defend herself out of fear of what Joe will do. So now Joe and Kate are this strong power couple living in New York City, which is where the show all began. And Joe has fully accepted his murderous identity, and that dark side of him is his only side of him. And he knows that he wants to change the world, and he has killing as a tool, as well as all of Kate's resources to help him through. So that was everything from season 4, and I'm going to make another video with some of the characters and storylines that might be relevant for the final season, which drops on April 24th on Netflix.